Ow. Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning Yerushalmi, Demai, Peri Gimel, Halachet Dalid, Dav Chavtes, Amid Aleph, 3 lines from the top of the Amid by the new Mishnah by Halachet Dalid. The Mishnah will begin telling us that a professional miller, a tochain, a person who has the mill, the client will bring the grain and he's going to turn it into flour, even if he is an Ama'aretz, even if he is a kuti. And we're going to learn today a lot about the Kutim. And as we mentioned many times, there was a nation, that Sancheiriv, who was attempting to conquer the world. When he came to the Holy Land, when he came to Eretz Yisrael, he tragically exiled 10 of the Shvatim out of, and in its place, he brought other nations. And there's a specific nation that are called the Kutim, that after them settling in some area in the Shomron, some unusual phenomena, which was that wild lions, which by nature don't enter cities, they stay in the wild. They began to enter their settlements and eat them and kill them. And they understood that this is happening because they're not accepting what they call the God of the land. They converted out of fear of being killed by lions. They are called Geirei Arroyos. This is a halachic concept of how do we view converts who converted not because they were convicted in the truth of Yiddishkeit, but they were afraid of something for a ulterior motive. There is a machlokes tanoim whether they're considered Jewish or not. And regardless which Tana you follow, even according to the opinions that they were Jews, at the end of the Tanoic era, it was discovered that they are still worshiping their deity, which was in the form of a dove that they placed on top of Har Gerizim, Yoina Bahar Gerizim, and we realized that they are idolaters. And we will actually see in today's daf that their status, their halachic status, changed from as they were viewed prior to us becoming aware and therefore suspicious that they are idolaters versus how we halachically view them post that event. The Mishnah is recording how we view them prior to that event. That will be important for today's stuff. So coming back to the miller, if a miller is an Amaretz, if a miller is a kuti, one might think that how can I, a chaver, give them grain that I properly tied, which I did. Maybe when they will give me back the flour, they're not giving me back my flour. They're giving me back the flour, the same amount, but from someone else's grain, from their grain, from the kuti's grain. And Amaretz, we already said so many times, did separate from a Gedoyla. The problem is that his produce is the mai. A kuti, even during the time, and even according to the opinions, that the Kutim were bona fide Jews, but already from the beginning, they didn't understand, they didn't accept the meaning of Lifnei Iver Leisit and Mechshol. Even when they ate food that they tithed for themselves, they had absolutely no problem giving complete tevel to someone else. So if we were to suspect that the kuti substituted my grain with his own grain, then I have to be chayish that it's tevel gomur. If the Amaretz is the miller, then my son, but if there would be a chashash, then now I have to be concerned that now my flour is the mai. So the Mishnah is going to be machadesh, and this will be the whole daf today. First of all, a professional will not do that. Furthermore, even if he's not a professional, that means even not only by a miller do I not suspect that he exchanged my grain with his grain, but even if he's a private person, so let's say I want to ask him to be a shomer, if he's a custodian, it's just two private people, I am allowed to entrust with a kuti or with an amaretz my grain, my flour, and I don't have to be a chayish that he exchange it with his own because they are not suspect to be thieves. That's the key over here. Okay? Now, We're going to learn a lot about sfekis. We're going to learn about the big difference between whether it's chazik isura or heicha the loy is chazik isura. We're going to learn about a suffix and a sfek sfeka. The topics that we'll touch upon today quickly are real big topics. We're going to learn about a pesha asad, a pesha hitin. We're going to learn about the rule that kol milsa da vida li geluya lo mishakri ba inche, and we're going to see how to some degree we apply it to a goy, not fully. In other words, the whole daf today will be about chazakis and the trustability that we give. All coming back to the case, I gave my grain to a miller and he gave me back flour. I entrusted my flour with my neighbor who happens to be an Ama'aretz or a Kuti. And when I get it in return, the question is, do I have to have a chashash that he exchanged it with his own? And therefore, either it's going to be Damai, an Ama'aretz, or it's going to be Tevel if it's a Kuti, or I Bechlal don't have to have such a suspicion, or there's a possibility for that, so there's like a doubt over here. That will be today's stuff. Without any further ado, Chavra, let's go right into the Mishnah Halacha Dal. Says the Mishnah, Hamoylech chitab l'tochoin, and we're going to go with the Girsa as he writes in the Shinun Neschais Gimel, l'tochoin kuti. Case number one is I gave my grain to a miller who is a kuti and or a l'tochoin ama'aretz. Says the Mishnah that when he gives back to me flour, becheskosan, I halachically assume that he gave back my grain ground up, and that will affect the status of maisris. I don't even have to suspect that it's the mai. That will also be connected to the laws of Shemitah. What will be the laws of Shemitah? Right, we learned so many times already in this Masechta that Svichei Shvi'is, Machloikes Tanoim, Chachamim hold is Asad Midrabanan. So again, maybe he, the Ama'aretz, maybe he, the Kuti, right? Do we have a concern with Shemitah? And by the way, there is a big Machloikes, Rishonim, whether an Ama'aretz is suspect to not keeping properly the laws of Shemitah or not. It's really a Machloikes between the Rambam and the Rabbeinu Tam. The Rambam holds that an Ama'aretz was also lax in the laws of Shemitah. The Rabbeinu Tam holds that an Ama'aretz was only lax in the laws of Maisres, in the laws of Tumah and Tada, but not in the laws of Shemitah. And if that would be the case, according to the Rabbeinu Tam, when the Mishnah says the word Shvi'is, it's referring to the Kuti and not referring to the Ama'aretz. Because according to everyone, the Kuti, even according to those who hold that the Kutim initially were Jewish, and even when they were observant for themselves, they had no problem giving something that they knew is forbidden to someone else. The Torah says, they only applied it literally, like the Tzeduk. So the bottom line is that I don't have to be afraid that they exchanged my flour with their flour, my grain with their grain. So it retains a status for Maisris and for Shvi'is. And if you're going to look inside the Rash Shirilio, almost in the middle of the right column, he has a girsa in our Mishnah, which is amazing. Avaloi Latuma. Avaloi Latuma means that, listen, to say that he didn't even touch it, of course we suspect that he touched it. Now, obviously, if my grain was not made wet with the 7 halachic liquids, I am not suspecting him that he made it wet and he touched it. That's not the chashash. This is just, I'm reading out the Rash Shirilio by heart. But according to the version, Avaloi Lutuma means that if I gave to the tochoin, to the miller, the Ama'aretz, a grain that was already muksha l'kabel tuma, if I gave it to the kuti, something that was already muksha l'kabel tuma, it's not thievery for them touching it. So I do suspect that they touched it, and then the flour will be coming. And clearly, if I took precautions to be shomer my grain for it not to become wet, then I am allowed to be mafkeded. I'm allowed to give it to a neighbor who's an Ama'aretz, or to a kuti, or to a miller. I'm allowed to do that. And I don't have to suspect that they made it muksher and tami, clearly. But if it's already muksher, then according to this version, it's only becheskasa lemaisvus for l'shvius, but not for tum. Now, however, in contrast, that's the key of the Mishnah, that if I gave my grain l'tochain hanochi, the din will be, then it's demai, wawi, demai. Now, there's a big machlekes what the word demai means. First of all, clearly, we suspect, we're choishesh, that the nachri would exchange. It's not theft. In other words, he's giving me back. I gave him a grain that should produce 5 pounds of flour. He's going to give me 5 pounds of flour. But the goy, many of them would not have a problem giving me the 5 pounds of flour from someone else's grain or from his own grain. In his mind, he's not stealing. He's giving me what I need. But that is called theft because I gave him, the way the business worked is I gave him my grain and I want him to make my grain into my flour, not from someone else's grain.
Well, why demai not tevel?
Oh, so 1 second. To say that the goy for sure exchanged it, we can't say that. We don't know that. We're going to go, I just want to say that even though if you're going to look here in the Marafulda and the Pnei Moshe, you're going to see that they emphasize demai. We're going to follow the Ravid's understanding. Just to know there is another opinion that the word demai here does not mean, Danny, what demai means in the whole Masechta demai. Demai here means that there is a chashash, maybe it's tevel gamur. So as we keep on repeating the Pnei Moshe, we opened up Daf Aleph with demai in Masechtas demai means you have to separate only Trumas Meiser and the Meiser Sheni, and that's it. Here, demai means meisafek. You have to separate everything. You have to separate Truma Gedoyla. You have to separate Meiser Rishon. You get it, Danny? Because there's a real chashash over here. That's the meaning of demai. Everything is a suffix. Now, again, I know that if you look inside the demai in the Marafulda, he doesn't hold that. Right, 4 lines from the top. Hanachi demai, the chashinon that sheneschalev beperis am haaretz. In other words, the Marafulda, as most others, they don't want to teach the word demai to mean different than how it means in the whole Masechtas demai. It's inaccurate. You're using a word, it means something else. Use another word. But the problem is, Danny, what you're asking, why demai? So first of all, we don't say that he exchanged it with his own flour. He's a miller. He has it from other people. You're living in a Jewish neighborhood. Let's go after the majority people here are Jewish. Elamad, the majority people are Amaratzim. So what is the chashash that you exchange it with Peres Hamaretz? That's the way the Marafulda learns. And again, that Ivet learns that the might means no, even Truma Gedoyla.
All right, why don't we say that he's a professional? Like when we talk about fish, that they sell only kosher fish, and all that.
So good.
He's a professional.
I'm telling you, today is a big dot. Yes, you're touching on the heart of the whole dot. I'm happy you're saying it. Yes. So what we see over here, Kevan, when I said that a nachri is suspect to thievery, Kevan, it's not thievery that he's going to, the way we use the word in English. It's just that he doesn't consider it unethical because he's giving me back 5 pounds of flour. You understand? The guy doesn't have all these halachas of maisres and of shvius and of tumah. I'm not even suspecting him that if I gave him grain of better quality, he's going to give me flour from someone else's grain of inferior. We're not saying that. That he won't do. What he will do is he's not a bar mitzvah. So who cares? My grain, your grain. He doesn't view it as something wrong. That's the way I understand. And he'll do it. And the Amaretz and the Kuti, no, they know that. Now, the next case is a bigger chiddush. And to the point of Kevan, that there's something called mirsas. We're going to see it in the whole daf today. In other words, a professional, even a goy, has a higher level of trustability simply because if he is going to be known to be dishonest, to lose his business. Right? Now, what about an individual? An individual doesn't have that level of trustability. That's why the Mishnah has to be machadesh. It's not a repetition. It's going to be the same law, but there's a novelty, which is the next case. If a person will deposit one's produce either with a kuti or with an amaretz for safekeeping, they became your custodian, they became your shomer. Now here, Kevan, they're not a professional. So they don't have that. Still, we say the same thing. That we're not afraid that, it's a sfiche shvi'is. We don't say that he gave me back from someone else's, which might be the mine. We don't say that. And even though he's not a professional, in other words, we trust him for this. He's going to give back to me what I gave to him. And let's go back to the Eitzel HaNachli. Now, if I gave it to a guy, the guy became my custodian. Now, here comes a liner that, God willing, we'll get to the end of today's daf. What did the Mishnah say in the Reisha? Danny, Demai. However you understand Demai. Here, we don't say that. Here, we're saying what you were asking, Danny. Why didn't the Mishnah say before? Here, the Mishnah says, here, Kipei Roisav. Kipei Roisav means not Demai. Vadai Tevel. Vadai Tevel. You get it? And the question is, why Vadai Tevel? Why don't we say Demai like before? However you understand Demai, the Gemara will explain beautifully the difference between this case and that case. Now, Rav Shimon argues with the Tanna Kama, and Rav Shimon holds that even in the case of a shoyman, of a custodian, when you give it to a guy, it's only Demai. Only Demai means we don't say for sure he exchanged it. We say that he possibly exchanged it with his own. And let's go again with the word Demai, like the Ravid says. That what? That it's a suffix, but even Truma Gedoyla, or again, the Marafulda insisting, like all of the Noise Kalim, almost all of them over here on the Daf, that the Demai cannot mean different. What it means always, this is already much harder, Danny, because what do you mean Demai? I mean, if it's his own, then it's Tevel Gamur. So he says maybe another Ama'aretz gave this guy something to watch over. Look inside the last Marafulda and the Amid. In the Mishnah. So I like, when I looked at it yesterday, I appreciate that Rabbi. That says it can't mean that over here, even though we're using the same word. A guy, a professional, has grain from other people. When I give my produce to my neighbor, because I'm going on vacation, and I don't want the Ganovim who break in to get hold of it, either he gave it back to me or he exchanged it for his own. To say that there was another Ama'aretz that gave it to him is like such a stretch. Okay? But at least then, according to this, it will fit with the word Demai. So what we have really open, Kasha, is why is it that in the case of the Shoyman, by the Nachri, it's Tevel. Let's go to the Tanna Kama. And in the Reisha, by the case both of the miller of the Tachain, and in the case of the in the case of the Tachain, we say that by a goy it's only the mic. That's something that we'll leave for the end. Okay. Says the Gemara that what happens if I give my grain to a Tachain and I see he did not give back mine to me. The Mishnah says I don't have to have such a fear that it was exchanged. But sometimes you'll know it was exchanged. Says the Gemara, that if nischalfa kupasai eitzel hatachain, for some reason you know that it's not yours, okay, there was an exchange. Not, again, guys, we're not chayish that they're ganovim. If you realize it wasn't, give you a marshal, guys, you give your shirt into a dry cleaners that came to me. It happened to me many times. Get back, this is not my shirt. In other words, the guy's not a ganit, he exchanged it. This is the, he makes a living. So now, listen to now. Camp laundry, yeah. If you know that on that day there was another Ama'aretz there, then listen to this, guys. Choishesh means Demai. In other words, it's not mine. I know it's not mine. Now, maybe another chaver was there today. Yeah, but if I know that an Ama'aretz was there today, now I want to point out something. I mean, these are the big rules of doubts. This is such a big doubt, even though it's so little over here in words. Guys, remember that on one hand, we go after the majority. And on the other hand, let me just quickly remind ourselves, there's a rule that kol kavua kemerza al merza dam, which means that what's the case? Guys, there's a grinder. Let's say I'm the chaver. you're the chaver, you're the chaver, you're the chaver. But we found out that from the 100 clients that came today, one was an Amaretz. That's what Rabbi B'Shem Rabbi Yechanan is saying. If there was even only one Am Haaretz bevadai, if I would go after Roiv, I would not say Choishish. B'Shem Rabbi Yechanan Choishish always, because since I'm getting it from the miller, that's the rule of Kavua, called Kavua Kemechzal Mechza. So it's an equal 50-50, halachic 50-50 doubt. But the Imlav means not that I know there was no Amaretz. Guys, pay attention. Imlav means I don't know for sure that there was an Amaretz. Even though it could be there was an Amaretz, the guy's a professional miller. That's what people come every day. They bring in their grain and he makes it into flour. But if I know there was an Amaretz, even though there was only one, not yesterday, today, then I have to be suspect when I recognize that what he gave back was not mine, however that happened. Choishish, meaning the mine, came from the Amaretz. If I don't know there was an Amaretz, even though could be there was an Amaretz, Eino Choishish, even though it's not mine. Why? Because I'm going to say it's not mine, it's from another chaver. The Gemara is asking on this now, that's Frek the Gemara V'Yachush. What do you mean? What do you mean? You have to know that there was a Amaretz there that day, and if you don't know, isn't there such a possibility? There is such a possibility. So why would we not be choishish even without that knowledge? And let me find the source where we apparently are choishish even without that certain knowledge. Mabino, why is this different than the case of the Sirki? Sirki, who negate our Arab merchants? Negating Gemara. So a Sirki means an Arab merchant. What we are referring to was a minig that they were like Bedouins then. So they were Arab merchants. They would go from city to city. It's called the pop-up shops. And they would set up temporarily pop-up markets. Now, if they came as professionals, that's the Kavan's word, and they are selling food that's kosher, they have trustability. Because if anyone would find out that it's not kosher, they'll lose their business. So there is nemanus because they were professionals. But the case of the Sirki is that we discovered, they came, let's say, for a week. And we discovered Vadai that one day last week, they sold food that was not kosher. We found out. We don't know what day. You know what we say? What we bought from them is not good. Even though we don't know that on the day that we bought the food was the day that they sold non-kosher. We don't know that. It was the moment they become suspect. So then everything that they sold becomes problematic. That's the case of the Sirki. That Loi Chaim Tani Frek the Gemara did we not learn in but I said that Sirki, this group of Arab merchants that set up a shop, that Shahoisa Mistapekas Yom Echad Min Asa, that we find post facto. I bought their Sunday, you bought their Monday, you bought their Tuesday. Comes out of Shabbos, someone says, "Ooh, I know that one day in the week, I don't know which day, I know one day they sold non-kosher food, whatever that was."
What about the rove?
I'm sorry?
What about the rove of the week? They were
very good. We don't do that. That's the whole point of the Gemara. We don't go by Roy. That you know what happens? We say they're not trustworthy. So now we have to be suspect that they. No, it's let's say Kevan, we would know that they sold the non-kosher food on Tuesday, but Wednesday could be they also did. We don't know that they didn't. Well, you don't have to know that they sold. If I put food on Wednesday, I don't need to know that there was a problem Wednesday. The moment I know there was a problem any day, even though I don't know what happened on Wednesday, I have to say maybe it was on Wednesday. It's a beautiful question. So coming back to our case, I gave my grain to a miller who's at Amaretz. The Mishnah says I don't have to suspect that he exchanged it with his or someone else's. Fine. But what happens if I know that he did it? Now, even though I know that I did it, I don't know that he gave me an Amaretz. Could be he gave me another Chavers. And that was so Rabbi, right? Rabbi B'Shem Rabbi Yechanan says, Haken. If I know there was an Amaretz on that day called Kavua, I got a problem. And if I don't know, asks the Gemara, he definitely did not give me mine. On occasion, an Amaretz goes there. On occasion, there is an Amaretz. So why don't I have to say maybe that day there was an Amoritz? Just like the case of the Sirki. Maybe the day they sold the treif was the day that I bought it. No, there's a higher, it's harder to make it non-kosher here. Why? Once we see it's exchanged, why don't I right away say, now I have a suffix, maybe it came from an Amoritz. And let me use the words, whenever you have a doubt, there is a difference. Let me use the words that we have in Talmud Bavli. Heicha de ischazek esura versus heicha de loy ischazek esura. Which means like this. Look at this. Let me give you a case of Asham Toli that came to my mind. Let's say there's a piece of meat over here, and you ate it. And after you ate it, someone told you, maybe that piece was chaylev. You don't have to bring a carbon. You don't have to bring a carbon, even though maybe. But if there were two pieces of meat, one of them is chaylev, one of them looks like it, but it's shuman. They look alike. You ate one. You also don't know which one you ate. You don't know. When someone tells you, "Uy, Gevalt, you ate one of them was chaylev," you have to bring a carbon asham tali. Why a carbon asham tali? You don't know that you ate it. But since we know there was a problem, you get it? Once you know there is a problem, then a doubt is more significant. The mai to begin with is not a for sure problem. The mai to begin, that's the whole Masechta. Amaratzim tayv. Roiv amaratzim tayv, everything. There was a minority, and Taka, not a minority of 2%. There was a more significant minority that didn't tithe everything. But in other words, you're not beginning with a Yischazek Yisuna. So therefore, at least you have to know that there was an Amoritz that day.
It was their button also.
That's the point. Yeah. Very good. That's the point. Now, I would go that in the case of the Sirki, it doesn't mean that we discovered that they sold an Isur Doiraisa. Even if we discovered that they sold an Isur Daraban, I'm going to throw out the Chalovakum to make Danny nervous. Even if, doesn't matter. But there, we know that they sold something not okay. I just don't know what day. Another way of wording it is suffix, fex, feka. What's the might to begin with is a suffix. So now you have a suffix, whether he exchanged my grain. The case of Rabbi was he exchanged, I just don't know with whom. Did he give me a chavers or an amaretz? So you can say the word fex, feka. So by the mai, even if I know he gave it from an amaretz, I don't know if it's a problem. The mai itself is a suffix. That's the word. Let's read it inside. It's beautiful. Sirki, Efsher, law, Shaloi, Histapei. The Maharal says, Bitmiya. In other words, can you tell me that they did not supply non-kosher? We know, we found out that one day they supplied non-kosher. There's only one doubt. What day was it? Maybe it was when I bought it. Turning to that for Chavtes on the base. But over here, by the case of the Amoritz, we don't know that it was there that day, and we have to know it was there that day because the mai to begin with is a sub. Okay, beautiful. Next case, and the next case in the Mishnah was that the reason why we are allowing the client to eat the flour and no problem with maisis and no problem with shvias. First case was you gave it to a miller. A miller will be the most honest because he's a professional. Second case in the Mishnah was that we say that even if he's not a professional, Hamafkid Peter said he was just a custodian. In other words, Rab Taifa, Somoika, the Shem Rababo, Kutim, Nemanim Alapikadin. Clearly, we're saying that a Kuti is completely trustworthy. Now, why did we even need Rab Taifa to say it? The Mishnah just said it. He's not adding anything. So asks the Gemara, I need you Rab Taifa Somoika. I need the Rababo. The Mishnah says that Hamafka the Eitzel Amaretz or Eitzel Akuti, so then you can eat you what he gave back. He gave you yours. The Mishnah says Eitzel Akuti. The Gemara says, nah. The Mishnah is recording, like we spoke out in our words of introduction, that to begin with, yes, there was a doubt whether Kutim are Jewish or not. And there were those who hold that Gedei Aroyos are not legitimate converts to begin with. But we're not following that opinion. We are following the opinion that even though the motivation was not sincere, since they accepted the mitzvahs, they were Jews, period. But during the end of the time of the Tanoim, and when I know the Mishnah was written at the end of the time of the Tanoim, but the Mishnah Rabbeinu HaKadosh is recording the opinions that were said in the past few hundred years. So the Mishnah writing that when you give it to a kuti that he's neman is one level of chiddush. That even though they were gei arayas, they're completely trustworthy. They're not going to even exchange it. They're not stealing. They won't even exchange it. When a taifa samoika is saying, a taifa samoika is in the times of the Amoraim. At that point, we discovered that they would worship their deity, the Yoina and the Bahar Gerizim. Once they became suspect to being Oivdei Avodah Zarah, their status became even worse. So the chiddush is that even after that change of status to the worse, still, when it comes to this, they were trustworthy. You give the guy a box of flour or of grain, he's going to give back what you gave to him. He won't exchange it with his. He won't exchange it with someone else's. Masnisa, this is great. Also, Meimad comes the Amoira at a different era. Afilo mishanachshadu. Okay. Now, what we are saying, no, not because of his parnasa. It's a chiddush. In other words, an Amoritz won't do that. A kuti would not do that. Kuti would not care to give you treif. A kuti would not, when it comes to honesty of thievery, and a goy, chayish that he'll do it also, he's not stealing. It's just certain halachic levels of trustability. That's the right word in English. Now, what happens if I can't presume anything? What happens if the custodian himself says, listen, I want you to know, you know, many people came to me, they all gave me the same bag, the standard bag of 5 pounds of flour. You gave me yours, he gave me his. I want you to know that I misplaced yours, but I know that what I'm giving back to you came from another chaver. What happens now? That will be the classic hapesha asad hapesha hita. In other words, since without him saying a word, halachically, I presume he's giving me back mine. Why is there a problem? Because he's notifying the problem. He is saying, I took yours. So if I believe that he took mine, then I should believe that he gave me from another chaver. Either believe him or don't believe. Is he believed to say in the Talmud, I took yours, but I replaced it from someone's misukanim. I replaced it from a chaver. Do we believe him? Or says, yeah, because again, and on the Babli, it's simply hapesha asad hapesha hita. In the Yerushalmi, a different way of wording it. We say, listen, if you believe that he took it, then haminu shenasa. You got it? The girsa obviously is shenasan. So 1 second, you can say no, maybe he took it from an amaretz. Maybe he replaced it. You know, if you don't believe his words, how he replaced it, then al tamineu shenatal. Don't even believe that he took it. Okay. Now, that logic you would think applies everywhere. Says the Gemara, no. This only applies for an amaretz. This logic is not said by a kuti. Kavali. However, kuti at maminoi shenatal. We believe the first part of the statement. It's called palginon dibura. Yeah, I believe. I believe that when he says, but the ein at maminoi shenasan. Wow. Why? Look inside the Pnei Moshe. It's more or less the middle of the Amid, a little bit towards the bottom. Kuti she'amar kach b'didei, by the kuti amrinon at maminoi shenatal. I believe him when he says that he did it by accident. He took mine and he replaced it. But the ein at maminoi shenasan kein tzarach loymar. Why? Because the ma she'omer shenasan achedim v'sukanim tachteihem, that we don't believe him. That we don't believe him. And now we have to clarify b'diuk. What are we talking about? This is very important. Why? No, if there's a logic of hapesha, it's a logic. If it's not a logic, it's not a logic. The way he words it is ma anam kaimin. What are we talking about? And let's even go back to the case of the Amoritz, which is important. If in the case of the Amoritz, again, if he would have just given back to me and he would have not made a peep, the Mishnah says, I have the right to presume he gave me back mine. But he was honest. He's saying that I by accident, I took yours, but I gave you back. Now, if he would say the kuti da Amoritz, I gave you back, not the kuti, the Amoritz, I gave you back mine, but mine was Mesukan, what would we say? if he says, I took yours and I gave you mine.
That's regular demai.
It will be the mine. What happens if he says, Danny, but I was misakin mine? Would we extend that passion?
Isn't that what every Amorit says?
Yeah, but here it's different. Why is it? Why might it? First of all, you're right. But why might it be different? This is very logical. Because if he wouldn't have said a word, I would have presumed that it's good. Halachically, he gave it back to me. It's good. I'm believing him when he's telling me, I took yours, I lost yours, I exchanged yours, but I'm giving you back mine. But don't worry, I tithe mine all the way. That wouldn't work. What's a pesha it is. I believe him when he says he gave me back from another chaver. But if he were to say, I gave you back mine and I tithe mine, afilu ama'aretz lo yehei neman. That's a rule. Ama'aretz is never believed that his produce is tithe. It's like the Chachamim said that. Okay. So for him saying that I tithed it, hapesha asad would not work. But there's another nuance. What happens, again, it's about his. He says, I took yours, and I wanted to replace it, and I know that you chavedim, you guys don't trust us. I don't like that. So I got Chaim Yankel to separate all of the Tumas Maestros already. I mentioned someone who did it. That is something that helps. Why? Because there is a rule that milsa da avida li igaluye loy mishakir ba inshe. You know, in the Bible there's daf, and here it's a few lines. If I make a statement that could be discovered later, whether I'm saying the truth or not, that in itself gives me more credibility. Here we are machalik between a Jew, Amaretz, and a Kuti. Let's read it inside. But if it's about, I'm not saying that I did it, and Amaretz will never be believed. He's saying that someone else did it, and he mentioned who. You know, he shared information that could be verifiable information. So now the Gemara is asking, because we should say, Kol Misa da Avida Li Galuye, Lo Mishakri Ba Inche, and there should be no difference between the Amaretz and the Kuti. So answers the Gemara, Amare Ba Tiftoid. We must interpret our Gemara, that this chiluk was made by those who hold that a kuti has a din of a goy. I want to tell you the chiddush of a goy. That the spalgon, that this is where we make this discernment, this chiluk, this differentiation. That kuti kigoy. Now, first of all, there's a machlokes. What the status of a kuti? I'm sorry, kuti kigoy divrei Rabbi. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel Loimer that kuti kisrol l'chol davar. This is important. But let's go back over here to the logic. This statement must follow the opinion that a kuti is like a goy, and therefore, don't forget that the Mishnah says when you give your stuff to a kuti and it gives it back to you, you can eat it. You have to appreciate the chiddush. And even the opinion that will hold that a kuti is like a goy, but regarding thievery, he won't be like a goy. But the moment he says, I exchanged, and he says, I gave you back other produce, that Chaim Yankel tithed, that's the case. By an Amaretz, we say, since Milsa Davida Ligaluye, Lo Mishakri Ba Inshe, we believe him that it was tithe. He's not saying I gave it to you from a chaver. He's saying I gave it to you from an Amaretz or from mine, but someone else did all the my tithe. If a kuti, if he has a din of a goy, we still believe him if he would say nothing. But the moment he's telling you I exchanged it, we don't apply to a goy the logic of Milsa the Avida Ligaluy La Meshakir Ba'ish. We do apply nirses. We do apply a businessman. If it will be discovered that this guy is not honest in his business, he'll lose his business. There we do give him the months. That's important. That's all back came into what you mentioned. But we're speaking about a custodian. A custodian is not going to lose his livelihood. So people won't ask him to be the custodian. This is not Masiyach L'Pnei Tumah. This is not Masiyach L'Pnei Tumah. The guy is saying it's not Masiyach L'Pnei Tumah. Something he did. I made a mistake. He's owning his mistake, and he's giving you a name of a person. And there is no. You have to be a yid to have apply to you milsa of David Ligaluye. Okay. Now, anything that will become revealed, something which will become known later, people won't lie now because they'll be discovered later to be liars. And it makes sense that a Jew cares about it. The goy, you know why the goy won't care about it? Because the whole topic is not important for him. People don't understand it. In other words, when we say that if you leave your house unsupervised, and most houses, if you don't have a camera in your house, your food is treif. We're not saying that your shiksa is a ganafte in that sense. We're saying that she doesn't care about it. They don't care about it. So in other words, so it will be discovered that I exchanged your meat with my McDonald's meat. So what? In her mind, so what? It's a non-issue. And if we view the kuti that way, that's the pshat. Now, we have 2 minutes. I know that Rabbi Blau has your site. This is Le'ilan Ishmas, your father, Mart Chabeina Yechiel. Like this. I just want to close the daf because that was the kasha. That why is it that in the Reisha we said Demai, and in the Seifa not the final Das Yachid, but we had why would we say Tevel? The Eitzel Anachli, the Mishnah says that if you leave a Shomer, the custodian is an Achli, when he gives it back to Kippur, it means Vadei Tevel. If the miller is a guy, we didn't say that it's tevel, even though if the miller would have given you flour from his grain, it would be tevel. We're saying demai. Let's go with the raiva. Demai means maybe he gave it from his own. And why, when it comes to the custodian, what's the difference? And you know what? There is no difference. It's 2 different cases. The Rabbeinu HaKadosh was mekatze. If it would have been the same case, it would have been the same rule. Forget, Rabbi wrote it in a way where you read it just doesn't fit. So you have to say, Kan is the Sefer. Kan is where the Tana writes, the Tanakama, the Chachamim write, Kipei Roisav, Kupa Bekupais. Kupa Bekupais means that the produce was left in a box. Guys, if I give something to a custodian in a box and someone else, these were standard boxes. That's why I used my mashal of a 5-pound flour bag. When it's easier to make an exchange, we're going to say tevel vadai. Whenever you don't, in other words, if I give something in a box to the custodian and he gave it back to me in a box and all the boxes are the same, that exchange could be done much easier without anyone knowing. That's where, according to the Tanakama, we say he did it. Not maybe, he did it. The case of the miller, the case of the Reisha, when people would leave their grain with the miller, they would not leave it in the container. They would leave it, they would pile it on the ground. And the owner remembers how much they left. They know this pile would give me 5 pounds. The miller doesn't know that for the miller to exchange my pile with a neighbor's pile, a pile is not exact to begin with. He'll be more concerned to exchange it because, don't forget, we're not saying that they're mamish ganova. He wouldn't want to do that. He said, it's not going to be the same amount. But the Reisha, by the miller, paytas bepaytas. The chashash is the exchange, not a box in a box, just a pile. Pile for pile was started to exchange. Beautiful, logical. So there's less possibility. Still, demai, but it's less. Here, since it's easier for him to do it, and he knows he's giving me exact the same amount, I think that's the key. Because we're not speaking about people that are ganovim the way we use the word ganav. In his mind, who cares? Who cares? I know exactly how much grain. I know I'm giving you back exactly the same amount of flour. So we say, since he's a goy, he doesn't care. He doesn't have trumas. He doesn't have maestras. He doesn't have shvias. So he made an exchange. Tanakama holds it's tevel gamur, gavaldik. All right.
The box for the box. It's a generic box, right? There's no
generic box. It has to be
no siman or marking that it's your box.
It's not about the siman, Danny, but it's about the way I'm understanding. It's that the owner, the miller, knows he's giving back the same amount. he doesn't have a guilty conscience. He's not cheating anyone in his mind. And when a pile and a pile, and not so simple to exchange a pile.